Well, folks, absolute bedlam continuing to break out across the entirety of the Russian hellscape. I'm going to get into a number of stories today, as usual, but really, we've got to talk about the collapsing car industry. The Russian government now saying that they're going to attempt to bail out the collapsing car industry. Largest manufacturer in the country. It's going to be as hilarious as it sounds. We've got seeds of resistance popping up all around Russia. We've got Putin expanding his program of arresting musicians, continuing to persecute critics for social media posts. We've got the economic news just pouring in. That's all absolutely catastrophic. The film you're watching here, this is just part of the good men and women of Ukraine doing what they are doing to hold the line in democracy, destroying Russian oil refineries, petrochemical plants, electrical substations. And here is the same refinery burning into the morning. This is out in Kostovo, quite a distance from Ukraine. And this is the second time that Ukraine has struck this particular refinery. Russia's Kostovo oil refinery, again facing hardship, burning into the morning today after explosions. One of Russia's largest refineries. It was built in 1952, processing 340,000 barrels per day. It's no longer doing that. Yeah, well, probably not. It was burning well into the morning, and these are not cheap things to fix. Here's another angle. This is all probably visible from outer space, as entertaining as that would be. So these refineries are being struck every day, right? But when you look at the entire list, it is quite a thing. Like each of these is a refinery that Ukraine has struck. And this campaign is only now just getting into its third month, I think as of like day before yesterday. 23 separate refineries. Some have been hit 3 and 4 times. Saratov refinery itself was hit 5 times there. The Syzran refinery hit 3 times. Bashneft Ufa refinery hit 3 times. Most of these are 2, and there's one. The refinery last night, the Kostovo that I just showed you, that was the second strike on that. One was on October 16th, and last night, of course, being November 4th. And here is the Roman candle-ish view right after the strikes hit that refinery. And it wasn't just the refineries and petrochemical plants they were hitting last night. Substation attacks. Our good friend Yevgen has been so gracious as to keep a rolling list of these substations. For those playing at home, this is the ongoing Moscow blackout bingo. This is Moscow, the global epicenter of 90% of the world's terrorism. We started following this on this channel. My channel is almost 3 months old now. I started following this about a month and a half ago, as Yevgen continued to post them. And it started with only 2, and now it's 3, and now it's 4, now it's 5, now it's 6, 7. They are Ukraine's armed forces are now encircling Moscow, and each that they destroy is only getting us one day closer to Russians having a very, very cold winter. Maybe that's what it'll take to get them to start rethinking having this gargoyle czar and his 25-year global terror binge and looting binge. If they really want him to be the man that represents them, who knows? Anyway, hard times in, I can't read this on Twitter probably. You can read what I wrote. Anyway, this is the Nizhny Novgorod losing its electricity last night. Ukraine is slowly dismantling the electrical grid across Russia. Russian slaves will allow their czar to do absolutely anything to them. And you've seen darkened cities before, but this is a Russian darkened city, so it should be a little more satisfying than what you might see in Alabama or Toronto or there in London. Things are not going well in the entirety of the Russian hellscape. And how is Russian propaganda handling this? Now, this is hilarious. This is from Ukraine Stratcom. I'll read you the description. Commentators on Russia's largest propaganda shows now forced to perform extreme verbal gymnastics to avoid mentioning the spiraling inflation, food scarcity, and the fact that Ukraine is destroying the Russian oil industry, and with it the economy and the situation with the food scarcity. Everything is just getting worse and worse. So I'll just read you this. This is the Solovyev show, and he, of course, has his little Dr. Evil suit on to scare the pants off of those Western politicians, just in case they start thinking these are like normal people. So what's the issue? Cashin keeps telling me we're fully self-sufficient in grain, but bread hasn't gotten any cheaper. It's actually tripled in price in the past year. We're being restricted on oil, in quotes, yet gasoline doesn't get any cheaper either. Somewhat fuel crisis. Sure, what does he say? Sure, we're having some certain difficulties, as they say. Everything's in quotes. Gasoline didn't get any cheaper. That's why we're calling it. That's what we're calling it now. So you see, they're calling out their own game. That look, we are now resorting to speaking in these sort of parallel terms. This like maintaining this parallel reality. And so you see these little cracks that are happening among these. This is probably the last time that this guy will be on this show, by the way. Maybe the last time he's anywhere. The price increase is now politely described as, in quotes, it just didn't go down, right? And then he gets a little more ridiculous. I like this guy, actually. It didn't go down so much that it shows a negative trend in the rate of becoming cheaper. Yes. So the slaves are beginning to see a negative trend in the rate becoming cheaper. So the Russian propaganda matrix, there are some fissures. There are some little cracks appearing. And this is all very good news. And further on the de-evolution of Russian society, the dissolution of the culture, the increasingly futile and desperate actions on behalf of the Russian government. I'll read you what I wrote this morning. With the price of food and unemployment now forcing Russians to cut back on necessities, Russia's city of Khabarovsk today lured locals to the central square with promises of soup made of fish and cabbage in exchange for singing patriotic songs and holding signs. Yes, the eager Russians in line here to pick up the coveted bowl of fish and cabbage. Oh, can't wait to get my hands on that fish and cabbage. There's the military propaganda. There's the military propaganda right there. It says something about special special technological service. Yes. Never leave the propaganda at home. And here's more of the eager Russians waiting in line for the coveted bowl of fish and cabbage. Yes. This is where it heads, folks. This is what it's all about. I can't decide whether this is more 1930s Hooverville, USA, or Stalinist 1950s Stalin propaganda film. And here's how you pay the bill, folks. You will sing the patriotic music for the fish. Yes. Yes, go to the square, collect the fish bowl. Anyway, this is insane. Anyway, this is Russia. This is where it's all heading, guys. Whether it's 1930s Hooverville, it's Stalinist movie, it's North Korea. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's insane. And meanwhile, while all this is happening, the Russian propaganda matrix trying desperately to hold things together, we've got the Russian economy in real terms on every metric completely collapsing. This is the largest auto manufacturer in the country, one of the largest employers in the country. They're already going through mass layoffs. They've got a number of other crazy things. Earnings just came out last week. I covered that like 3 videos ago. This company is in big trouble. And I'll read you what Kyiv Insider wrote. In effort to save the country's largest auto manufacturer, the Russian government has exempted AvtoVAZ from income tax until the end of 2028. This is a bailout, you guys. That's what you call this. What if the the U.S. government, all of a sudden said that, hey, Amazon doesn't have to pay taxes because they had like 3 quarters in which they were losing money, and it was going to be such a loss of jobs that it became in the government's interest to keep that company afloat. This is exactly something that they would do. That's what this is. This is the bailout of one of the largest companies. This company's been around since the 1930s. Earlier, the company head Sokolov warned that without state support, AvtoVAZ faces collapse. Since the end of September, the enterprise has been fully switched to a 4-day work week, and employees are abandoning positions due to salary reductions. Yes, AvtoVAZ in big trouble, as is all of Russian society. And you can't have a real crisis until you've got, you got to add the jet fuel crisis in there, right? I mean, there's just Jet fuel crisis has to come to the party, right? Russia's largest private supplier of petroleum products has warned of a looming jet fuel crisis because all the other crises, it's just not enough. Following the crisis in the gasoline market, where strikes on oil refineries have created a shortage and wholesale prices have soared by 40 to 50% since the beginning of the year, problems in Russia's jet fuel market may emerge. This was stated by, this is the guy, managing partner and board member of Petroleum, the country's largest private supplier of petroleum products. And it goes on to elaborate further. And so what do you do when your society is collapsing, your economy is collapsing, you've just got, you've got a failed war, you've got inflation, what do you do at that point? Well, you open another front. You start shipping your most expensive weapon systems over to Venezuela to prop up a dictator that is surely going to be gone in 6 months. Russian MP Zuravlev, we are already supplying weapons to Venezuela, but the shipment of Oreshnik missiles is being considered. They're not actually going to do this, guys. This is purely propaganda to once again scare the pants off Western politicians. They supposedly only have 3 of these Oreshniks, and one is apparently in Belarus. Ukraine destroyed another one. So that means that Russia basically has one of these things. It's not going to Venezuela, but it has been one of the most hyped stories across the Russian propaganda matrix in the past few days. More nonsense. And we have to always cover the, in Russian-occupied Ukraine, we have these influencers, just like you have influencers, social media influencers in the city where you live, and they go and they open a restaurant, and they post, yes, the burritos at this Mexican establishment are amazing, and they put it on their Instagram out to, to 200,000 people. Russian-occupied Ukraine has a very similar version of this, but add the Russian touch to it, and you'll get exactly this. Here's what I wrote. This is an encore presentation of this guy. This is the 3rd time I've shown this guy. His name is Kirill Syrios. He lives in Russian-occupied Donetsk, and he's engaged of all sorts of most evil, nefarious. He's a very, very bad man. I'll read you what I wrote. Let's check in on the guy that sells the homes of murdered Ukrainians on Instagram for local gangsters in Russian-occupied Ukraine. This home even comes with all personal belongings, including a suitcase of old family paintings and photographs. Apparently business is good, as he's recently earned enough to purchase high-quality dental work. And this is new. He didn't have this last week. Because we watched, I don't know if you remember, you watched the video, we had another video with him, and this is new. He's making some cash out there in that Russian-occupied Donetsk. And here he is. Now remember, this house that he's showing you here, this is in Russian-occupied Donetsk. The Ukrainians that were living in this house are either dead or they fled, and local gangsters just sell these houses in these scandalous notary deals where you basically just meet the notary with a bag of cash and you quote, buy this house. And the notary is bribed, and the local government, whatever Putin has running this particular little community in which this house is located, just everybody gets paid. And who loses? The family. This looks like, this is once again, it looks like it was an elderly family lived here based upon the furniture. Is the inside of the house. And all their personal belongings are still in this house, so they obviously had to flee. It wasn't like they voluntarily are selling these houses. These are, listen to this. He's holding a suitcase, an old suitcase. It looks like it's a suitcase from probably the 1950s. And he, that suitcase right there, I don't know if you can see it. His suitcase there, he says that there are paintings and old photographs right there. It's all family stuff. This was like, how every family, especially before the age of all this digital photography, everyone has, boxes of old photographs. And it's the one thing you save if your house is burning down. The people obviously couldn't leave this house fast enough while carrying these things. So they were definitely either forced out or they were killed, or they had to flee fast enough to where they didn't even take all their family, the most important family heirlooms. And this is Russian culture, you guys. This is what happens when the Russians come. And he talks about all the great things in the house, how gas boiler, he says. And he talks about how much it's worth. He says it's an antique sewing machine, and it's worth money. And he also said the same thing about the suitcase, that you could sell the suitcase for X amount of rubles. It's just money. They don't care about, it's just get money. That is the mentality in this culture. It's just about get money. Just look at this guy. Remember this guy when it's time for the Hague and the propagandists are in the clink? Yeah. And he's smiling a lot more now that he has these new teeth that his ill-gotten gains awarded him. Anyway, so we got to always talk about Hungary, because the Orban puppet regime, Putin's puppet Orban, he has done a lot to hurt Ukraine, and he does everything to assure that he gets the promised Zakarpattia region that Putin promised him about a week before the invasion on February 24th, 2022. Anyway, this is foreign. I'll just read you what I wrote here. Former deputy head of Hungary's foreign intelligence, András Telkes, reveals that the Orban government is now fully integrated with Russia's foreign intelligence service, a NATO member that is now likely passing all data directly to the Kremlin. Yeah, it's exactly what's going on, and we've all been saying this, and here you can hear the guy actually say it. I'll read it to you. It might be obscured, and he's speaking Hungarian. In fact, a political cooperation between the Hungarian government and the Russian intelligence service was established. This was the case when, if I remember correctly, at the end of August, the Russian intelligence published a press release saying that Brussels and Ursula von der Leyen were actually trying to bring Peter Magyar to power against the current government. Peter Magyar is the young, charismatic guy that is polling way ahead of Orban. And if there's this April is the election, and if Orban does allow a free election, he's going to absolutely get destroyed in the election. Peter Magyar has openly stated several times, this was the platform of his re-election campaign, is that they're going to put Orban on trial, not in Hungary, where Orban has rigged all the judges over the past 20 years, but in the EU, in an EU court, in the hands of real justice, as Viktor Orban has looted Hungary into its new position of the poorest nation in the EU. That's who Peter Magyar is. And the next day, the Hungarian foreign minister said that there was nothing to see here. And the next day, the Hungarian foreign minister, because what the Russians were saying was absolutely true. Anyway, so they're working in conjunction with the Kremlin propaganda apparatus, hand in hand, the Orban government. And then the prime minister he has also adopted this initiative. And so it's official policy. So the Kremlin is now writing the official policies, government policies for the Hungarian government in exchange for keeping Orban in power. And delusional Orban thinks that it's 2019 before Putin had thrown away his entire military and the sovereign wealth fund and really, Russian society, economy. He thinks that Orban thinks that Putin is going to save him and come in and crack skulls the way he did in Venezuela when Maduro was falling in 2019 and when Assad was falling in the 2015 or so, when Lukashenko went down in 2020, almost went down in 2020. He thinks that it's that Putin that he's going to call, but it's not going to be that Putin. It is going to be the new Putin. Just a reminder that the Russian government has an entire industry producing heavily propagandized versions of Western films that are given similar titles to pull viewers away from the original. Examples include HBO's Chernobyl. The original one, it was harsh on the Moscow government, of course, because they tried to hide the Chernobyl disaster. It wasn't until the Swedish picked up radiation it was like 5 days after the catastrophe. They tried to hide it. They tried to lie their way out of it, as the Russians always do with every catastrophe. Even now, it is just it's an ingrained part of Russian culture, is that dishonesty on the public level. Anyway, so the Russians came out with their own version to whitewash the first version and to pull traffic away. People go search for Chernobyl, and they'll find this, Chernobyl, The Abyss, released 2 years after the original. And it's just a bunch of nonsense Russian propaganda about Russian heroism, and it doesn't talk about any of the real disaster that happened. And number 2, Netflix's Winter on Fire. Original, Winter on Fire, released in 2015. The Russian version, Ukraine on Fire, 2016, was directed, as you probably know, by Oliver Stone. He paid 9 million euros to do that. And it was produced by one of Putin's close associates, who provided the cash for it. And they even let Oliver Stone use it as sort of a vehicle to promote himself. He sort of got carte blanche with this. The promotional material is really just all about Oliver Stone. Anyway, it just whitewashes it and said, and it's all about the Euromaidan revolution from 2014. Basically whitewashes it and calls it a Western coup and this and that. Here's the original, and here is the Russian propaganda version. It's very easy to mix those up. Here's the original version of Chernobyl. Here's the Russian disinformational version of Chernobyl, the Abyss. And I know about this version because I bought a new TV about 4 years ago, and I wanted to see that Chernobyl. And all I could find was the free version. The Russian propaganda is always free, but I'd have to pay for the Chernobyl version. I would have to pay for the Winter on Fire. Ukraine on Fire is free, and so is Chernobyl, the Abyss. Those are free. They're everywhere. You can go on YouTube. It's just Russian propaganda nonsense. This is one of the many ways that Russian propaganda is at war with the Western mind, and you should be aware of it. Anyway, so Putin's repression keeps expanding. The Russian singer, one of the many singers that has been arrested in the past 3 weeks, thrown into jail for singing lyrics critical of Putin, or even supporting other musicians that are now sitting in jail because they had sung anti-Putin lyrics, even if the lyrics are from someone that's already been exiled to Estonia. It doesn't matter. The Russian singer that committed the ultimate crime of repeating an anti-Putin lyric in public was today released from serving 2 weeks in jail in Ekaterinburg. This is musician Zhenka Radost, who performed in support of Stop Time, the still jailed music group. Anyway, here he is getting out of jail today. And his mom's there picking him up. These are all like very young people, which gives us some hope. Maybe it's becoming cool to sing lyrics like that. He made the mistake of including the lyrics Swan Lake in his in one of his songs that he sang on the street with a guitar. I'll read you what I wrote this morning. As Russia spirals into an amalgamation of North Korea, 1930s Stalin-era Russia, and hell, people serving decades in prison for social media posts are now allowed to get married while serving time. And this is just, I found this scanning Russian media this morning. And this is just one of the many political prisoners in Russia. He made the mistake of posting something critical of the war around the beginning of the war, right after the beginning of the war, and he was sentenced by a military court, 6.5 years in prison for a social media post. But they allowed him to get married, just like in the good old days of the USSR, when wives would go all the way to Siberia. I mean, many people don't know that Siberia, one of the main reasons that it got populated was because they had so many gulags there that the wives, being the dedicated Slavic wives that they would go to be close to wherever their husbands were serving out their 20-year sentences for just some fabricated nonsense. It was really just a way to get free labor. That's what the gulags were all about. And but this is the old Soviet tradition. So she'll be allowed to see him every few months as he serves time for criticizing the regime, and he'll be in there a number of years more. This is the Russian system, you guys. And the Russian system, not only claiming Russian victims, Ukrainian victims, but global. In India, relatives of citizens who were deceitfully recruited into the Russian army held a rally. Participants demanded a response from the government and the return of their sons and brothers. Lured by advertisements of lucrative employment in non-military fields, men are being forcefully sent to the front. Many are missing or dead. Families have received neither information, bodies, nor any compensation. And here's some video from one of the protests. And they are just looking for their relatives. Most of the time, there was a big campaign earlier. Mostly the Indians are sort of wise to it now, but at the beginning, the first couple of years of the war, they were luring Indian men, and from Bangladesh also, and Indonesia, with the promise of lucrative labor. And then as soon as they land there in Russia, their passports are taken and they're forced to sign papers And then a week later, they are at the front, absorbing expensive Ukrainian artillery. And on to the more disturbing part of today's video. I don't think I can even say what I wrote here. This is one of the more barbarous Russian atrocities that I have seen throughout this war. So I want you guys to tell your friends and tell people what the hell is going on in Ukraine. I'm not even going to read it out loud. If you can take a second and read what I wrote here. This was one of the more horrific atrocities that I've seen. Of course, I cannot show you this film. It's about a minute long. It's circulating all over Ukrainian media now. And it's basically a couple was walking, and Russians can now get their drones about 40 kilometers into occupied Ukraine now. And it's basically just being, these drones are run by like gamer kids. There's a lot of like 20-year-old Russians that think it's fun to go and murder Ukrainians. And so they thought it was really fun to go and murder this couple. They killed both of them, a man and a woman, and their dog. And it takes the woman and the dog a while to die. Unfortunately, the man was killed pretty quick, but the man witnessed the first two killed. He had to wait a couple minutes before another drone came back and took him. He made the sign of the cross, and then they blew him up. And they were just walking down the road with their dog, and just normal people. And she was even carrying a little white rag, just to symbolize that, look, we're just people living just in case. This is probably a walk they take every day. If I were you, I'd go and just look it up. It's on Twitter. Take a look. I definitely can't show you on YouTube. But this is the Russian world. And those who think that Ukraine could, somehow surrender, just stop fighting, and the Russians will just stop all this stuff. No, this is what Russians do. This is what they've always done in Ukraine, or in any place they've ever been allowed to go. And so it's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse. Anywhere Russians are allowed to go, we're going to see this. The farther they push into Ukraine, this means the more people that they're going to kill. And I'll leave you on a lighter note. Today, Zelensky was again at the front, right near Pokrovsk. And I just asked a simple question. I tagged the Kremlin. They never answer. Even when I get like 2 million views on a post, they still don't answer for some reason. I don't know, maybe one day. Why doesn't the Moscow gargoyle midget ever visit the front like Zelensky regularly does? Why is that? Zelensky visits Azov National Guard troops at the front line near Pokrovsk. And you see, this is what a real leader does. He visits the front. He doesn't hide in a bunker. He is out there. No matter how dangerous it is, no matter how important he is, that's what bravery is all about, you guys. And really, that's all I've got for you today. So, all right, have a good one.